Hello and welcome to this month's webinar. We're continuing the theme of support again this month with a closer look at the Maths and English pages on Sitting Guild's website. So we've now settled into running these webinars twice a month. On the second Thursday, normally at 10 AM, but slightly different this month, but with a repeat session on the fourth Wednesday at 4 PM. The main segment is the same for both sessions each month, so there's no need to sign up for or log into both. And as always, there'll be a recorded version added to the Resource Hub after the second of the two live sessions has taken place. As usual, the Q&A function will take place after the live segment, so anyone watching these sessions live would be told to hold their thoughts until after. Also, just before we move on, there's a little reminder about signing up for our email alerts. The alerts are the principal way in which we send out operational and other updates about our qualifications, so it is really important that you are signed up to get these, and especially to ensure that your preferences are up to date. So, okay, straight into this month's In Case You Missed It from the wider Maths, English and ESOL landscape within England. Firstly, if you weren't able to get to last month's Learning and Work Institute conference, a recording of the whole event is now available on their website. This year's session was particularly good as it built on the new Skills for Life strategy paper that the Institute put together a few months ago with some alarming data on the decline in adult numeracy and literacy provision over the last decade. The event was co-sponsored as always by the UCL Institute of Education, the UCU, NATECLA and RAPAL, and has become one of the main opportunities for Maths, English and ESOL practitioners to come together. And moving to a virtual format in the last couple of years has had the added advantage of making the event free. Secondly, we've mentioned the take the test rule for level 2 apprentices countless times over the last few months, but here's a reminder that the current suspension of that rule is finally due to end on the 31st of December. Barring any last minute reprieve, and there have been a few of those, the normal situation will resume from next month, where apprentices working towards standards that require them to achieve Maths and English at level 1 will also need to attempt the assessment at level 2. The latest version of the apprenticeship funding rules confirms the 31st December deadline, so anyone who hasn't gone through the gateway by that time will, by the looks of things, be subject to this rule. Finally, the ESOL Nexus resources have been used extensively by ESOL practitioners for a number of years, although they have been looking for a new home since the original project funding that enabled the British Council to create and curate these resources came to an end. Fortunately, the Education and Training Foundation has now adopted them, so they've been migrated across to the Excellence Gateway. Again, a really useful set of materials to support language acquisition, particularly within a UK context, if you're not already familiar with these. Okay, here's the section where we update you specifically on news from Sitting Guilds. Two particular things of note this month, both of which are coming soon. Firstly, pass rate data for functional skills exams is something we've been asked about quite a lot recently. Unlike GCSE, where a whole year's worth of data effectively gets dumped in one go, it's actually quite difficult to pull together a meaningful reflection of the proportion of functional skills exam attempts that result in a pass. However, our assessment team has just finished doing quite an extensive amount of number crunching to put together a bundle of data covering the 2020-21 academic year. The report is just in the process of being signed off, so it should be published before the end of this month. Meanwhile, the other big coming soon is an updated set of worked examples for functional skills English, speaking, listening and communicating. We've been working on these for some time to try and address the thorny issue of how much detail is needed on the assessment record sheets. Hopefully these examples, there's one for level 1 and one for level 2, will show that quality is more important than quantity here. We're really not looking for war and peace on each candidate, just relevant examples of performance to justify the assessor's decisions. The new worked examples, again, they're just in the process of being signed off, should appear on the functional skills qualification documents page before the end of this month. They do have much less padding on the form, but much more extensive accompanying notes to explain and contextualise what's on the form. Next, a quick reminder that candidates completing on-screen functional skills maths exams are now allowed to use a handheld calculator rather than having to use the inbuilt Evolve one. There are some conditions around this, for example, a stricter candidate to invigilator ratio, and there's also some protocols to follow to manage the transition from the non-calculator to the calculator permitted sections of the paper. So it is important to read the relevant section of the functional skills instructions for conducting exams, the ICE document, carefully. And also we've recently extended this to include remote invigilated exams taken using the new remote invigilation service. Again, the remote invigilation centre guide confirms this, specifically under section 6, the qualification specific guidance section. And one more thing just before we get into the main body of this session, we're increasingly being asked about the availability of resources to support ESOL. Now we mentioned the ESOL Nexus resources a moment ago, and it's great to see they've finally been brought into the Excellence Gateway, so they're freely available to all. However, it's worth also mentioning a couple of ways Sitting Guilds is able to support English language teaching and learning. For example, we've recently introduced, or rather reintroduced, a regular series of ESOL specific networks as part of our Connect Share Network series. You can find details of these along with those for all of our other networks on the Maths and English Resource Hub. Secondly, you may have seen that there is a resource called Journey to English available via SmartScreen, a self-study course for ESOL learners pitched around entry 3 to level 1 that focuses on the geography of the UK. We've worked with an organisation called Click to Learn to make this content available, and it's mapped to the ESOL core curriculum. Now on to the main topic for this month, navigating your way around our website. We're going to focus on 4 key places where you can find information. The Resource Hub and the Functional Skills Qualification page, as well as the new Open Assess landing page and the ever important Centre Documents library. So let's start with the landing page. It's dead easy to find, sittingguilds.com/maths and English. This takes you to the main landing page, as I said, with the geographical options shown here and a direct link to information about functional skills. From here, there's just a couple of clicks to find the qualification pages for each of our Maths and English qualification suites that are available in each case. So selecting England or functional skills will also signpost the Maths and English Resource Hub. So that's our next port of call. Anyone signed up for these webinars will already be familiar with the Resource Hub, but just to reiterate, this is where you can find the various forms of support with delivering Maths, English and ESOL that we make available, as well as the back catalogue of all of our previous webinar updates for anyone wishing to box set binge on these. You'll also be able to find details of our upcoming Connect Share Network sessions, an overview of e-functional skills and the Maths and English tutor resources available on SmartScreen, our detailed guide to the current funding arrangements for Maths and English qualifications, and of course the monthly new to us sessions that we run for any organisations or individuals starting to deliver Sitting Guilds Maths, English or ESOL qualifications. Next, this is, perhaps unsurprisingly, the most visited page on the entire sittingguilds.com site. The first thing to do when you get here is to check that you've selected the correct tab at the top of the page. You can see the blue oval on this slide. Most of the time you'll need to select Documents, but we'll mention the one time the Information tab comes in handy in a moment. The Documents page has 2 main drop-down sections, or accordions as we sometimes describe them. The Assessment Materials is where all of the sample assessments, all of the speaking, listening, communicating forms and guidance notes, all of the live assessment documents for entry level can be found. Information is grouped by level, then by subject area, so it's fairly self-explanatory. The only thing to note is some of the documents are password protected, particularly the marked schemes and indeed all of the live material at entry level. Centre Documents is then where pretty much everything else relating specifically to functional skills can be found. There are a number of loose documents at the top of the list, for example the indicative pass marks and the assessor instructions documents for entry level, Also, a list of the performance codes used when providing feedback for paper exams, and our Q&A document that we created during last year's series of webinar updates. We then come to the accordions, labelled so you can see more easily what each contains. Of particular importance are the qualification handbooks and guidance for delivery documents, but you can see we've also placed copies of the DFE subject content documents on which all functional skills qualifications are ultimately based. A reminder that we didn't just dream up the scope of these qualifications in a darkened room, and that the subject content statements are the same no matter which awarding organisation you're working with. Also significant are the mapping grids, where we took the post-reform functional skills subject content and mapped it alongside the criteria from the legacy qualifications and also the adult numeracy, adult literacy national standards. Just a couple more things to mention whilst we're still on the qualification page. The information tab is needed if you're looking for the web-based sample on-screen tests, the free-to-air ones rather than the markable ones that are now available through OpenAssess. They are again grouped by level and accessible via the relevant hyperlink. However, do please bear in mind that they'll only work if opened using the Surpass Viewer plugin. Whilst we're on the subject of sample on-screen tests, here's the OpenAssess landing page where the user guide and a recording from last September's launch webinars can be found. The application form, if you don't already have OpenAssess up and running, can also be found on this page. We are planning to add some short walkthrough videos to help navigate OpenAssess, so do look out for these soon. Finally, just one more calling point before we're done. The Centre Document Library is where all of our generic quality assurance and access arrangements information, amongst other things, can be found. You'll hopefully be aware that the quality assurance documents were recently updated and reformatted. The latest versions of everything relating to quality is under the Quality Assurance accordion. Meanwhile, the when and how guidance relating to access arrangements, along with the generic information from JCQ, can be found under the Access Arrangements accordion. One thing to bear in mind here, the procedural guidance on access arrangements always needs to be read in conjunction with the relevant qualification handbook, as that's where we'll explain what arrangements might be appropriate for that qualification. So it wouldn't be a webinar without us asking a few questions. You're listening to the recording at the moment, so we're not going to play those out live. However, if we just scroll to the next slide, these are the questions that we would have been asking you if you were in a live session. You're welcome, if you'd like to answer those questions, or by all means drop us an email to pre-employment@sittinggolds.com. Which brings us to the end of the main segment of this session, indeed the end of the recording as well. We will just say that's a wrap for this month and indeed for this calendar year. Do enjoy whatever time you're able to get off during the festive period, and we will hopefully see you again in January.